Alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we are going to talk about sugar. We often hear how sugar can be bad for us. Let's try to find out, is it really that bad? Before we start, what's sugar? Sugar is a generic name given for sweet tasting carbohydrates. In other words, we can say sugar is basically a kind of carbohydrate. Now, carbohydrates can be of different kinds. There are monosaccharides, which are the smallest unit of the carbohydrate. Examples of monosaccharides are glucose, fructose, galactose, and mannose. The form of carbohydrates that our body uses to provide energy to our cells is glucose. The next type are disaccharides. Disaccharides are made up of two monosaccharides. So here are three disaccharides. We have sucrose, which is made of glucose and fructose. We have lactose, which is made of glucose and galactose, and we have maltose, which is made of glucose and another molecule of glucose. The next type is oligosaccharides. Oligosaccharides are bigger than disaccharides. They consist of more molecules of monosaccharides, and our body doesn't digest these kinds of carbohydrates. They act as fiber in our diet. Some examples of this would be raffinose and stachyose. The third type of carbohydrate is polysaccharides, and polysaccharides are made up of more than 10 units of monosaccharides, and examples would be starch, glycogen, and cellulose. So you might be asking, which one is it, the one we have in our home? Well, sweeteners extracted from sugarcane are sucrose, which are made of a molecule of glucose and a molecule of fructose. And all the syrups extracted from fruits are fructose, 96% fructose. And honey is also fructose. Here we have the structure of sucrose. See the molecule of glucose at top and a molecule of fructose. And both of these combine together to form a molecule of sucrose, which is shown below. As we said, sucrose is the table sugar that we add. As we said, the crystallized table sugar that we have in our home is sucrose. Now let's talk about natural sugar versus added sugar. Fruits and vegetables and grains naturally contain sugar. That is why they are sweet. Whatever carbohydrate that you eat, they have sugar in them in various forms, and that is why they are sweet. And these natural sugars have complex structures and they take a long time to break down. Now coming to added sugar. It is the sugar that you add to your food. It may be in the form of sugar crystals, jaggery, honey, or any syrups. And these added sugar have simple molecular structures. Now there's a difference between how our body breaks down the natural sugars which occur in the fruits and vegetables and the added sugar that we add to our food. The naturally occurring sugar in food breaks down over time and gives you energy for a long period of time. That is because they have a complex molecular structure and the breaking of it takes time. And that is represented by a red line in this graph. Now compare that to the added sugars. The added sugars break down quickly and give you a lot of energy at one time. And that gives rise to high fluctuations in your blood glucose level. As soon as the blood glucose level goes down, you start craving something again. Before we move on, let's quickly look at glucose and fructose. The 6-membered ring that you see is the glucose molecule, and the 5-membered ring that you see is the fructose molecule. Both of them are monosaccharides, as we saw in the earlier slide, but there's a huge difference between how these are metabolized in our body. First, look at their satiety. Satiety means to have the feeling of fullness after you have a meal. So as we discussed earlier, the glucose is the form of carbohydrate that our body uses to generate energy. Glucose is utilized by our body muscles, cells, brain, and all the other organs. But when we look at fructose, our cells don't have fructose receptors, And that is why our brain doesn't recognize these molecules. And that is why our brain doesn't recognize that it is full and we have eaten quite a lot of food. Or the hormone that's supposed to tell you you're full, which is leptin, isn't released. And you will still feel hungry and you'll still keep eating. Now let's move on to the metabolism of these molecules. When glucose gets absorbed into our bloodstream, it travels to all parts of our body, our brain, our muscles, our cells, and it gets delivered to these different organs to help them do their thing, to help them give energy to do their thing. And the remaining amount of glucose then goes to the liver. What you see in the picture here in red is your liver. So the glucose goes to the liver, and the liver converts the glucose into glycogen in order to store it for a longer time, so that you can use this glucose when you need it later on. Now let's compare this to the metabolism of the fructose. As we said, our body cells don't have fructose receptors, and the amount of fructose that we ate all comes to our liver. And because our liver doesn't know what to do with this fructose, it converts it into large droplets of lipids. And these lipids cannot pass through the wall of your liver in order to form fat tissues elsewhere in your body. And what ends up happening is that your liver stores that fat, and it leads to a fatty liver. Fatty liver is something that occurs when you drink a lot of alcohol. But you also see it with fructose. Why? Because our liver metabolizes fructose just as it metabolizes alcohol. So now looking at glucose and fructose, we understand that glucose is something that our body requires to function. That is a sugar molecule that our body cannot function without. But as for fructose, it doesn't really have a role, and it only leads to disease. And keep in mind, this fatty liver could lead to many more diseases such as cancer, type 2 diabetes, hypertension, and so many more. So what do? You have glucose, you have fructose, and then you have sucrose, which contains both. Which one should we eat? Now we know that fruits contain fructose. Does that mean you quit fruits? No. Fructose occurs naturally in fruit. Anything that occurs naturally in food, you don't have to be worried about it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plays it so with wisdom. So if fruits contain fructose, they also have fiber, and the fiber helps reduce the dangers of fructose. However, when you juice your fruit, that's not good because it lacks the fiber. Now here are some practical things for you to do. First one, limit your sugar intake. Oftentimes we think we need a whole lot of sugar to make something taste good. But you'll notice that even if you reduce a little amount of sugar, your food still tastes good. The second thing for you to do is to avoid all kinds of beverages. That includes fruit juice, because these beverages, they contain insane amounts of sugar. Try reading the label before you drink. The third thing to do is to add more fiber to your diet. Adding fiber to your diet not only reduces the hazards of the sugar on your body, but it also helps in the digestion. Fiber is a topic for another day, inshallah. The last thing you need to do is to move your body. Add physical activity to your day. It could be running, swimming, exercise, or even taking a simple walk. Among all the four, I think the hardest one is to cut back on your added sugar intake. So here are a few tips for you. The first one, reduce your sugar. As we said, your food will still taste good. The second is try snacking on fruits. The third is drink more water. A lot of time when you have a craving, it's because you are thirsty. So try drinking a glass of water. The fourth tip, in order to replace your fruit juices and the beverages, try drinking flavored water instead. And the last step is to go one step at a time. If you cut down on all of your sugar at once, then you're not likely to make it and go back to your eating habits. So that's it for today. In the description box below, I have a whole lot of links for you all to go and research this topic on your own. I have a few videos linked below so that you can go and watch the process of how the fructose is metabolized in our body and what are the effects of sugar on our health, and a lot more. If you find this video beneficial, then be sure to like, share the video with others, and subscribe. Jazakumullah khairan for watching. Wassalamualaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.